Hello everybody and welcome to the first ever So Says Shernoff Survivor Series special. I'm saying that 5 times fast. I'm Josh Shernoff, co-host of the After Chat podcast, and today we're going to be talking all things Survivor Series in preparation for this Sunday's live event on the WWE Network. But we can't get where we're going if we don't know where we've been. Survivor Series began in 1987, and while a number of things in the pro wrestling business have changed in the past 31 years, one thing that hasn't is the excitement that goes hand in hand with the Survivor Series. But why? Well, one reason would be nostalgia. You know, that thing that makes you excited about seeing Shawn Michaels' in-ring return, even though you know you're going to have to look at this. You can't unsee that. Chances are, if you were a fan in 1987, then that's your favorite time in wrestling. If you were a fan growing up in 1997, then that's your favorite time in wrestling. And if you were a fan growing up in 2007, I'm sorry. Anyway, today we're going to go over my top 5 most memorable moments in Survivor Series history. Number 5, the first match in Survivor Series history. That's right, the first match ever at the Survivor Series was also the first ever 5-on-5 classic elimination Survivor Series match. It featured a who's who of 1980s superstars, and perhaps one who? I'm kidding. Obviously, we know that's Danny Davis, seen here answering the question of what's black and white and can't get over. The survivors of that match were the Macho Man Randy Savage, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, all future Hall of Famers, which has me so excited that I can't wait for whatever the opening match is this year at Survivor Series. Number 4, the debut of The Undertaker. That's right, Survivor Series 1990 saw the debut of one of the greatest characters and performers in WWE history. The Dead Man, Big Evil, Booger Red. The Undertaker was led to the ring by Brother Love, and I have it on good authority that that is the second greatest moment in Bruce Pritchard's entire career. The first one, of course, being interviewed by me. The Undertaker's debut marked a turning point in the company. A character like this had never been seen before, and some could argue that after the American Badass, a character like this was never seen again. This is a hybrid. This is not The Undertaker. This is a slow-moving American Badass with scary music. This is The Undertaker. This is The Undertaker. I will even give you this as The Undertaker. But this is not The Undertaker. One of the biggest moments of this match has got to be the debut of the Tombstone Piledriver to poor Coco Beware, dropping him right down onto his head. Speaking of Tombstone Piledrivers at Survivor Series that drop somebody directly onto their head, causing serious and permanent neck injuries, that brings us to number 3. The Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan in the Gravest Challenge. No, this is not on the list because of the tombstone. It was just a really good transition. I mean, look at the devastation there. I mean, do you see it? As Hulk Hogan's head not only goes right into the mat, but through a steel chair. Now, Hulk Hogan would go on to say that that caused him serious neck problems for years and years and years to come. And I'm not saying that Hulk Hogan was lying. I am suggesting that maybe his recounting of the events were the opposite of reality. But the reason this match is on the list is because this match marked the first ever non-traditional Survivor Series elimination match to take place at the November pay-per-view, a precedent that many people feel lessened the pay-per-view, while other people have argued that it allowed the event to have more stakes in its matches. Either way, Hulk Hogan is an inspiration. The fact that that man is still walking after this move, forget the fact that he had a decade plus left in his career. After something so brutal, I can't even look at this. Anyway, please take this down. Take it down. I can't even look at it anymore. Number 2, the Goblin Gooker. Remember when I was talking about nostalgia? Well, it's important to note that while the most cynical wrestling fan might believe that the past was always superior to today's product, there was once the Goblin Gooker. On the same night, no less, as The Undertaker's debut. It's like Vince McMahon was sitting backstage going, The Undertaker's going to be so awesome. I must counteract all the awesomeness. The Goblin Gooker was many people's first memory of being disappointed by professional wrestling. It was beyond bad. There was no excuse, no apologies can be made. And I'm somebody who can apologize for T.L. Hopper. You don't believe me? He's a plumber. You think a wrestling match is going to scare him? Do you have any idea what this man has seen? He has been elbow deep in human excrement. And you want to talk about strength and conditioning? Do you know the tricep strength that it takes to unclog a number 2 from a urinal? Not to mention a number 3 from a sink? Man's a hero. Oh, and if you think I'm being too hard on the Goblin Gooker, don't worry about it. He's a friend. And the number 1 most memorable Survivor Series moment has got to be the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, it's the night that created the Mr. McMahon character. It's the night that ruined Bret Hart's career. And it's the moment that the not yet named WWE Universe collectively dry heaved at the sight of that loogie. Ugh. That aim, though. You know, the Montreal Screwjob didn't have to happen. It's a shame that it was 1997. By 1999, we were just running people over with cars. You couldn't get the match in the ring that you wanted? No screwjob necessary. Just hit his ass with a car. Now, in fairness, Steve Austin wasn't being difficult or unagreeable. He was just suffering from a severe neck injury, presumably from a tombstone piledriver that looked something like this. Whether you feel it had to happen or not, the Montreal Screwjob is definitely one of the most memorable moments in Survivor Series history. Honorable mention would have to go to the New York City Screwjob that happened to Shawn Michaels 5 years later in the form of his ring gear. So that trip down memory lane brings us to 2018 and this Sunday's Survivor Series. Up until this week, the build-up to Survivor Series has been kind of lackluster. What with all the other shows to promote, Evolution, Crown Jewel, Mixed Match Challenge, you know, the important stuff. But this past week, the fire was turned up big time, way up, as Becky Lynch was smacked in the face, bled like it was 1999, and solidified herself as one of the biggest badasses in the WWE today. Unfortunately, the aforementioned smack in the face, well, it kind of changed a couple of things. We'll get to that in a second. The WWE is in a transition period, whether they want to admit it or not. John Cena's MIA, Chris Jericho has seemingly moved on to other things, Triple H just tore his chest quad, and of course there's Roman Reigns. And while I hope that all of them will be back sooner than later, this gives an opportunity for the active talent in the WWE to either sink or swim. And that brings us to some of the top matches at this year's Survivor Series. Brock Lesnar will compete against Daniel Bryan in a shocking turn of events. It's almost as though Vince McMahon was walking around backstage and stumbled across a program from last year's Survivor Series and said, oops. So AJ Styles is out, Daniel Bryan is in, and I'm actually okay with that. I'm also okay with this heel turn by Daniel Bryan. I think it's the kick in the pants that his career needed. Also, what better opportunity to make sure that he's healthy than to have Brock Lesnar drop him on his head with 15 German suplexes? It's a great way to make sure your brain's okay. Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte. Well, this is another one that changed, and while it might not be as good as what was originally planned, it's a change that unfortunately had to happen. Thanks, Nia. WWE announced on SmackDown, I'm about to hit you with some medical terms right now. Becky Lynch suffered a broken face, but she also suffered a concussion, and that's why she's not going to be able to compete. And Charlotte Flair is a fine substitute. Don't get me wrong, this match could be great. But what I'm looking forward to is when Becky Lynch is healed, and this match maybe even happening down the line at a WrestleMania. Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey. Nobody should sneeze at the idea of that even being the main event. Unless you're Becky Lynch, in your current condition, you should not be sneezing. You shouldn't even be thinking about sneezing. That could be bad. Becky versus Ronda with a 6-month build-up to WrestleMania could be fantastic. And there'd be no reason why they couldn't go on last. I mean, especially since it fits perfectly with the WWE's female evolution. No, that's not the right... that is backtracking a little bit. Oh, there, no, that's closer, at least. And okay, there we are, finally. Where was I? Oh, right. Seth Rollins versus Nakamura. Now, this should be a barn burner of a match, I guess. Honestly, I don't really know what that term means. Am I so excited? Like, this was so good, I have to go burn a barn down? I don't know. Regardless, Seth Rollins has really made a name for himself lately as somewhat of a showstopper. Nope, that's okay. Stop. Putting that up there, not necessary. Really didn't need to see that twice. My point is that this match of Seth Rollins and Nakamura could elevate Nakamura back to where he really needs to be, as he has been floundering as of late. Also, on SmackDown during Nakamura's promo, we learned that he drinks Seth, so that should be fun to watch. Tag champs versus tag champs. This may be the most hard-hitting match that nobody's really talking about. The Authors of Pain, seen here with the Combat Ken Barbie doll, will be going up against The Bar. Now, this is a great test for the Authors of Pain, as so far they've really only been up against jobbers, enhancement talent. They've never had a challenge like The Bar. And I know what people are going to say, oh, what about NXT? They had such great matches at NXT. Well, you know what? They wouldn't be the first team that was dominant and scary and brutal in NXT and then came up to the main roster and didn't do the same thing. Speaking of the Ascension, they're in a match that I feel like will be wasting enough of our time without me having to talk about it. Finally, we have Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, both the men and the women, and honestly, I'm not really sure any of it matters. We may get some fun feuds or cool spots out of this, but for the most part, I expect to see a bunch of blue shirts and a bunch of red shirts instead of making their teams look like a cohesive unit fighting for their brand's supremacy. Instead, they're going to end up looking like a bunch of campers fighting it out in color war. While the shirts may help remind us who's on what team, year after year, I felt like all it does is strip the talent of their individuality. Unless, of course, it's Triple H. That man will wear the colors, but he won't be caught dead wearing a brand. Unless, of course, it's NXT. And honestly, if you had to choose which brand's logo you wanted to wear, would you choose differently? So the matches don't matter, though. What matters is the fallout. Okay, is it going to be Shane? Is it going to be Stephanie? Which one's going to be able to claim brand supremacy? And honestly, I hate to be negative, but I don't really care all that much. It makes me long for the days of Survivor Series where The Rock won his first world championship, or when Stone Cold Steve Austin first went one-on-one against Bret the Hitman Hart, or even when Bret the Hitman Hart faced off against Shawn Michaels. Stop, okay? It looks like a bad bald cap, and I don't understand it. Anyway, that's all the time that I have. Thank you so much for joining me on this special. This has been So Says Shernoff, because that is what Shernoff had to say.